Hello everybody. Good afternoon for those who are in Asia. Good morning for those who are in Europe. And welcome to our AI webinar. My name is Andrei. I will be your host today. And I will shortly introduce you our speakers, housekeeping rules, and agenda of the webinar. So maybe let me start with the introduction of our speakers first. So we have here Ondrej Vaněk, CEO and co-founder of Blindspot Solutions, a company delivering consulting and software development services in the area of machine learning optimization and artificial intelligence. And we also have here our co-speaker today, Tomáš Wolf, an associate partner of Anastra Business Consulting and our expert on banking. The presentation today will take approximately 55 minutes, followed by 15 to 20 minutes Q&A session, where we will go through your questions received during the whole webinar. Just to note, you can share your questions anytime during the whole webinar using a Q&A button, which you can see on your screen. Also, I would like to ask you to keep your microphones off for the whole webinar. Since we went through housekeeping rules, let me maybe briefly introduce you the agenda for today. So our speakers will first discuss the role of AI in the digital transformation for banks of the future. Then we will go through some of the usual bottlenecks we see in banks aspiring for AI adoption, followed by a very quick guide on how to correctly approach the AI adoption from our experience. At the end of the presentation, Ondrej will also walk you through a real example of delivery and results of initiative optimizing early warning signals using AI, which especially in these times we think might be very interesting. And as a last point, there will be a Q&A session where we will hopefully manage to go through all of your questions. That would be it from my side, but before I hand over the word to Tomáš as our first speaker, let's maybe do a quick, still unbiased poll just to see how you perceive your current stage of AI implementation in your organization, which would help us to a bit more steer this presentation. You can see the questions and answers on the screen, and I would kindly ask you now to have a look and provide us with an initial insight on what is the stage of AI implementation in your organization. We will wait a couple of seconds while you will read, and hopefully you will provide us some answers. Okay, we see we have so far 13 answers. Let's wait maybe 10 more seconds, and then we will close the poll. Okay, I would say let's close the poll, and I will hand over the word to Tomáš to quickly comment the results and to start the presentation. So Tomáš is on you now.
Hello. So from my perspective, can you, first of all, I don't see the results. If you don't mind sharing them on the screen.
Sure. I don't know, it's more visible. Yeah.
It is visible now. Thanks. I was wondering, thank you very much for actually providing us with the answers. And hello, my name is Tomáš Wolf, and I was introduced earlier. I'm with the business consulting side, working with banks mostly. And I was actually curious who's going to go to an AI webinar not interested in an AI. So we have actually two people. Interesting. But in any case, what is very interesting that we are actually at the beginning of everything, right? So when we're looking at this poll, everybody's looking at how can we utilize it. We're piloting the first use cases, first initiatives. So what we can say, we're, let's say, at the early stages, which is totally normal, and this is basically what we see normally in in most of the countries and banks we're working with. So if we move on, we can basically start with the webinar. So let's look at the first idea there. I believe that let's not kid ourselves that artificial intelligence is a fad, or that it's going to go somewhere, that is going to go away. I think it's not going to go away. However, at the same moment, please do not expect us to be the doomsday scenarios guys. Yeah, that if you're not going to adopt something in a half a year, you're going to die of something, right? No, it's not going to happen, right? So banking is banking. Branches are necessary still. However, yeah, we need to be practical, and AI is going to change many things we do, many ways how we do business. And today we will try to be really practical how to go about this and how to utilize it in today's scenarios. So although, as with ATMs, it was a new technology some, 60 years ago, today we don't even think about it. So, the problem there is that if we don't utilize AI today, you're losing the experience, and this is, crucial. So let's say we are going to talk about AI as a part of the business and the banking. And I know it's not easy to get oriented in it. And so that's why we're going to have another discussion here. So if we can move to the next slide, we will talk about the orientation.
So first, let's look at artificial intelligence and basically how it is defined, how we understand it. And the problem is that artificial intelligence can be perceived from multiple angles. And one thing is that AI is an active research field, which originated maybe 50, 60 years ago. And from that time, AI was defined through a large set of technologies, being it logic, expert systems, multi-agent systems, neural networks, and so on. And basically being constrained in the definition through technology will not give you successful reasoning about AI in the future, because new technologies will be coming. So it is beneficial to look at AI from the perspective of what is it doing, right? What is it enabling? And how we look at AI is that it is helping people to automate, accelerate, and scale human perception and decision making. So what is important here, that human is still part of the perception and decision making process. So AI is not replacing people, but helping people to automate, accelerate, and scale. And this gives basically a basic distinction between strong artificial intelligence, so-called artificial general intelligence, and narrow AI, where general intelligence, strong one, is trying to replace or actually supersede humans in every aspect. And I believe we are quite far away from that point. On the other hand, narrow artificial intelligence is really focused on a specific task. And if we go to the next slide, we can find what is the distinction. So basically in 1960s, there was Marvin Minsky creating a lab on MIT, and basically he said to the funding committee, give me 10 years, 15 at maximum, and AI is here and we will have robots walking the earth. And let's say 10, 15 years later, nothing of that happened, and people were kind of confused, or the researchers were confused, how to grasp even the definition of intelligence and where to start. So they started to define these sort of problems, like when we create a machine which can beat a human player in chess, that machine will have the artificial intelligence. But if you, and probably many of you know that in 1997, Deep Blue, the IBM machine, beats Garry Kasparov in chess. And honestly, if you peek inside Deep Blue 2, It's quite sophisticated machine, but within there is a simple algorithm which is now taught at the first year of the university. So there is nothing really intelligent, I would say. There is really advanced and complex algorithm. And if you look far in the, well, if you look, let's say, for the last couple of years, what happened? AI actually made quite a big progress. So you see concepts of self-driving cars, or actually prototypes, driving around. So I believe Google Cars, the Waymo company, had driven thousands or hundreds of thousands of miles autonomously. And probably some of you have Alexa, Amazon Alexa system, which is able to converse with you in a normal way. But if you look at the technology, it's still not general, it is narrow. The technology driving the car is really not able to lead a conversation with you, and vice versa. The conversational tool behind Alexa is not able to play chess or drive a car or recommend what you should do in banking. So still, even these use cases, which are quite advanced, are from the field of narrow artificial intelligence. So my recommendation here is not to focus on the general AI, so basically find an artificial intelligence which will replace people, but on a narrow AI which will help you solve a specific problem. And let's look at the next slide, where we summarized the 3 most successful factors for any AI project, AI initiative. I believe most of you know that artificial intelligence or any sophisticated algorithm is running on data, right? Being it small data, having just a few data points or a small database, or really big data describing or capturing the reality from different angles. So having the data is very important for any AI project to succeed. Maybe it's a small data set, but it is required. The second point which we see is that it is very important to define the scope of the problem we want to solve. Because if we say, you know, we want to deploy AI in our banking or in our bank to solve something, to increase customer experience, to increase our sales, that's very vague definition. And we need to dig down and really define the scope of the problem to solve. And here, this is basically linking the idea to the previous slides. The narrower, the smaller the scope of the problem is, the easier will be the solution. And the last piece is to have the correct expectations. And basically here is one side of the coin, which Thomas described at the beginning, that some of the people think that AI will not help them at all, and it's just a fad which will be away in a number of years, and we don't need that at all. So there's the skeptical point, and of course there is the optimistic one that we will buy or develop some black box AI, deploy it in our organization, and it will solve all our problems. And of course, as it is always, the truth is somewhere in between. So AI can help you solve some problems, but it will not solve everything for you, and you still be in charge of things. So let's look at the next slide to understand how AI will affect the banking industry.
Okay. So from this perspective, I think I like business. Yeah. So let's talk in terms of money, right? And if it doesn't increase money or decrease costs, basically if it doesn't run down the bottom line, it doesn't really mean much, right? It's just a marketing fad. However, we can talk about increasing efficiency, which is basically the most relevant idea. That when I talk to managers, most of the time we're talking about this: how do I make less people being in the call center? So okay, so let's use some chatbot, or some kind of voice bot, to reduce that, or some kind of smart technologies like that, right? So this is one. or, you know, physical security. You know, I have to have a guy in every branch. You know, it's a lot of money. So how, you know, can we do something with the video? You know, and stuff like this. So we're looking at like the operating model that we have today, just making it more efficient, and it most definitely can do that. Yeah? So this is one of these use cases where you can dramatically improve either results, you know, be it identification of fraud, scoring models for underwriting, collections, monitoring of your portfolio. All of that can be done, right? But one thing that's interesting about AI, it can actually grow the business into new areas. And you know what we're talking about, that you will be able to access new segments of clients that you didn't have before. You could go to, you know, if you're looking at segments that, if we are in banking, there are, let's say, some unbanked population, and we can most definitely tap that market with the better improved scoring models and identifications. Then we can most definitely create completely new products. If you know P2P lending, you know, it's peer-to-peer lending, but each peer-to-peer has to have a lender of last resort, right? So somebody who basically, if the people don't get funded, somebody funds it. And so, you know, having that, you have to have also quite a good decision-making algorithms, just to make sure that you can fund clients who go to P2P, and you can decide, you know, how much interest rate you're going to charge. New channels, excuse me, new channels. Digital wouldn't be possible without identification of IDs and whether the ID is genuine, liveliness detection of pictures, and so on and so forth. So in that regard, how AI affects banking industry, it affects it, you know, by making a lot more money in a lot faster way than usual. However, let's put it, you know, let's put down one fact. AI, it's not going to find you a solution, right? So if you don't know what you want to do, AI is not going to solve it. It's not like some magic box that will, you know, you put some data, you know, put AI on it, and it spits out what you should do for the next 10 years. No, that's not going to happen. It's you need to know what you want it to do. As Andre said, yeah. Do you want to decrease FTEs? Fine, let's talk about that. You want better cash management? Okay, let's talk about it. But question, what should I do in the next 10 years? It's still, you know, it's for the crystal ball. Yeah, that's that crystal ball is good for that. So if you move to next slide, we need to talk about where we can utilize it. And, you know, I was trying to put it into different sections where I'm at home. So risk, sales, operations. This is basically where I'm at home most of the time. And in risk is usually the most data-driven, especially credit risk, the most data-driven department in the bank I've usually seen. Yeah. So if sales is not, the ops might not be, then risk usually has most of the data. They are crunching it, you know, since day one. In a risk, once you have data, you can influence all of your aspects of work. Advanced credit scoring, authentications using biometrics, fraud, KYC, very interesting. You know, you have to have it, and you can actually get some help. Anti-money laundering processes and identifications, you know, all of that can be there. In ops, most of the time we're looking at decreasing FTEs, or at least leveraging some technologies to downgrade the pressure on capacities in peak hours, things of that nature. Processing of documents, not just pictures, but if you get a mortgage, there's a lot of things that you have to check that are included in the contracts, in the agreements, in the deeds, and stuff like that. So in that regard, most definitely operations are very good. Any kind of scheduling, most definitely there. Sales. In sales, we most definitely we can be looking at customized, individualized product offers. Right now, if you want to create a PTB models or next best offers, you're looking at several different models, and most definitely you're not gonna find the best ones there. So usually the PTB models or next best offers are not gonna give you the flexibility and, let's say, the flexibility to incorporate new and fresh data from for example, yesterday, the day before, etc. So from that perspective, if you want, for example, understand how much more likely is a client who visited your website and looked at mortgage and Q&A in a mortgage and played with the calculator, how much more is he likely to buy that mortgage than some other client who was just browsing the general information. You have to have a history. You have to build some kind of analytics here. You will actually be able to incorporate that into your models. It will spit you out the exact probabilities. So if we move on to another slide, just to summarize it before going to talk to you about whether you're ready, I would like to just sum up whether and why you should focus on it. First of all, it's here. It's not going anywhere, so it's important to focus on it because it makes you money. It grows the pie. The pie is not fixed, and third of all, it actually decreases your cost. So this is the baseline. And why focus on it? First of all, if we're talking, let's talk words, right? And I know that there are some very popular words in these days. Yeah, frictionless, seamless, real time, hyper personalized, and so on and so forth. If you want to do this, then you need to have some advanced decision making. And yes, we can do rule-based engines, forever and ever. But if you don't want to get tangled up in these decision making processes, this will make it much more easier. So customers really expect it, and so to keep costs under control, you have to have it. It makes you money. As simple as that. We talked about it earlier. And it's not that hard. Actually, Andre is going to talk about it a little bit later. If you have data, I think data is usually the biggest problem, but if you have data, you can most definitely start. So the question is, are you ready? And I think we'll answer that on the next slide.
So let's see, are you ready? When we talk with companies and we help them build their AI strategy, we always look for, let's say, the principal enablers, if they are there or not. And what we see is that most of the companies already have tremendous amount of data, or at least they are able to collect them at this point, right? The state of data differs, and Tomáš will talk about it later. But what we see is that the data is there mostly digitized form, so they can be processed by a computer. Speaking of computers, some companies are worrying that they don't have sufficient computational power, that they need some sort of super grid of computers to be able to deploy some computation models, which is not true. Most of our models are developed and actually can be used on normal computers, like our notebooks. which is not practical for, let's say, everyday use. So we still use servers in the background, but what can be done these days is that we can basically rent the computational power from the cloud providers. And at this point, and I believe for last 3-5 years, cloud is already really safe, secure, and fully GDPR compliant. So I wouldn't worry there as well. What we also see is that people are able to read some data and go through some data, but they have very they have strong difficulties to read complex patterns which are hidden typically in large data sets. And at this point, the amount of data collected is just growing exponentially. So just going through the data is almost impossible for any human. But computers can find the patterns. The question is then whether the AI methods and techniques are mature enough to be used. And I believe, I believe they are, and we have proofs because we actually deployed a number of them in various businesses in last years. And the AI methods can help you to get insight into what is going on, can help you to model the reality, even either the market or your customers, and can predict what will happen, right? And the next step is, of course, helping you with the decisions. What should you do? And AI is able to help you there as well. On the other hand, there are some bottlenecks in AI, and Tomasz will tell you more on the next slide.
Okay, so we actually are behind. We left behind the generic, the most generic stuff that I hope it didn't make you sleep. Right now, what we are getting into is mostly what we have, what we have seen, what we, what are our experiences. And as a business guy, I will be talking about mostly about organizations and operations, how things work, how things are organized. And here I would say that when I see banks, or let's not talk about banks, but organizations struggle in implementing AI, is basically we have like technologies and data, et cetera, et cetera. I'll talk about it later. But I think that one of the most important things that are not on the slide and I want to talk about is management buy-in. And the management buy-in is mostly about trust. And if I don't have trust, I don't know what it does for me. I don't know who will do it in my organization. How do I organize it? Who's going to be responsible for what? What are the KPIs basically for this advanced analytics and so on and so forth? Then it's a mind-boggling thing, and it's much easier just to keep on going and doing what I'm doing rather than start really breaking down the puzzle and trying to figure out where to put this one new piece. And to be honest, it's not we'll talk about a little bit later how I would approach it and how actually successful deployments look like, with the guys from Andre's team. They already been to several, so they have one. We have some tips later on. Most definitely, once we get to actual implementation, that means we're getting away from trying to educate and trying to figure it out why and where we should do it. We actually start doing it, and what we are running into is usually very poor data structure. Definition of golden records. We don't know where the data is. When we get the data, it's poor quality. It's really hard to get it in a good quality always, every day or every month, depending on when you want to run it, on every week. So it's we struggle probably the most there. how it happens. Sometimes it happens that, you know, core systems or I call it legacy systems are not up for it. So you have to build some infrastructure around it so that the data is in the granularity and frequency required. However, the next one is outdated operating model. What do I mean by that, right? Silos versus cooperative model. What is cooperative model? Cooperative model is something where you can quickly get to market. You know, you come up with an idea, you try it, and you kill it if it doesn't work. And you know, banks so far, what I've seen, are not built for that. They're built in silos. Risk is in their own little world, and sales is in their little world, and ops is in a little world. They sometimes meet, and you know, just to coordinate. But if you want to create something that, you know, that changes the model, it means the roles in the process change, the speed changes. You know, people have to start, you know, going to work on Saturdays, Sundays, because, you know, that's, for example, in Europe, that's not 100% normal. So in that regard, you know, it is a struggle, because all of a sudden you have something that works in real time. People expected decisions quickly, and yes, you're going to have some certain percentages of you know, decisions needed to be checked. All right, you're going to have some undecisions at the beginning, and for that you're going to have some workarounds. And if you don't have the ability to quickly change the organization, yeah, there we're usually it's a push. Yeah, it's a push, and then once you push it through, it's good. But you know, getting it through, it takes weeks. And AI strategy. Let's talk AI strategy. I would call it mostly missing, right? So there is some there is some paper, some idea, but there is really nothing substantial. You know, I would say that if I talk to the managers, let's put it this way, right? So if I talk to the managers, they have the box ticked, right? So AI strategy, I have it. Thank you very much. But then if you start digging in, like who's using it, you know, how is it implemented, et cetera, usually find out it's just the idea on the paper being presented somewhere, and that's not a strategy. Yeah, that's marketing material. And once we're talking about one more thing, it's a talent. And what I want to say is that 2 to 3 guys, you know, although scientists at heart, in the basement, don't make up an AI or data science team if it doesn't really cooperate with other departments. They're not part of the strategy. They're not part of the making of the processes, etc., etc. If they're just working on so-called their thing. You know, I remember 10 years ago, Lean Six Sigma was big, right? And in many places where they took it as just a fad, they created this process team, and this process team was completely cut off from everything else. And so right now, if you go to those banks, they're saying, yeah, Lean Six Sigma thing. Those are the guys who are like drawing these nice pictures, right? This nice boxes and diagrams. And that's not supposed to be Lean Six Sigma, right? So if you don't want that to happen, then you know the talent means you have people that are able but are incorporated in the organization. So now maybe we can look at a poll, and maybe later on the next slides.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thanks, Tomáš. Thanks for the insight. And yeah, let's do a quick poll on what our participants see as the biggest bottleneck of the AI adoption in their organization. Let us just launch the poll. By now, you should already see the questions and answers on the screen. And again, I would kindly ask you to have a look and give us your insight into what you feel is the biggest AI adoption bottleneck in your organization? Again, let's have a couple of questions while we will get a couple of seconds while we'll get a bit more answers. Okay, we have so far 14 answers. Let's wait maybe 5-10 more seconds. And okay, let's end the polling, and I will show you the results. Again, Tomáš, I will give you a word for a quick comments on the results. Hopefully you can see them by now.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. So what's good that we see that flexibility and capacity of IT doesn't seem to be a problem, right? So when Andre was talking about computing power, you know, having the infrastructure, when I was talking about core technology, legacy systems, it seems to be that, you know, all of that is being handled, and that's great, because then we're most definitely looking at better environment. Data 25%, great, because it's usually when we go to projects, this is exactly what we see. Data. This is the hardest part, to get it right. Strategy and ability, you know, everybody struggle with it, and a lot of people say all of the above. So, you know, sum it up, I think it actually corresponds with the first poll, when we were saying that most of us are at the beginning of the journey, and we're looking for clues how to do this. And so we can maybe move on to talk about, you know, how guys implemented the right stuff in banking.
All right. So as we see from the polls and from the conversation with banks around the world, they are in, I would say, early stage of AI adoption. And here, what we typically recommend is not to sit in front of a whiteboard for months and designing future-proof AI strategy, but we are recommending to start. Because when you start and you solve your first business problem with AI, then you can actually have a proof in your hand that it works, and the people get excited, and then you can structure how to move forward. So basically, this is our first recommendation, to start, and to start from business. If you look on the other way and you would like to start with technology, you can buy some fancy, I don't know, chatbot solution or some optimization engine, but you will find out that maybe it's not addressing the pain you have in your business, or it's not relevant to your business. So first, start from business and choose a good first problem to work on. And we typically look at the use cases which you can address from two perspectives. The first one is business. So it is important to understand and quantify how solving a specific problem or specific use case will help you to lower your costs, increase the revenue, or launch some new product or business. Maybe you can also look at security scenarios and understand how the selected use case and the solution to that problem will lower your risks or increase your security and so on. That's another aspect. And then, of course, it is important to understand the technical aspects of that problem. So basically, if there is some technology, some method, which can actually meet the desired performance, being it accuracy of classification, right? So rejecting fraudsters. I want to reject 90% of fraudulent applications. Is there some system? Do I have proof that there is some system which is able to meet the desired performance? Then what you need to understand is what data is needed and how much data is needed. And of course, as we saw in the poll and as Tomáš commented, where the data is, right? It might be a small data set, but actually a number of small data sets scattered across your organization and maybe on third-party providers and being siloed in some third-party applications provided by vendors many years ago. So this is also important to understand how to get the data onto a common platform to be able to reason over the data. And of course, it is important to understand what is the timeline of engineering. Maybe the problem is important, but if you would need 2-3 years to come up with a solution, the traction will be lost. And maybe through 2-3 years, many things will change and the problem will become irrelevant. So it's important to choose problems and use cases which can be addressed fast enough. And by fast, we understand typically 2 to 6 months. And how to basically proceed with the problem solution is that it is important to understand the business. So basically setting the business context such that everyone knows what problem from the business perspective they are solving. Then putting the data, I would say, into a common database or into a common platform which can be accessed uniformly. And of course, develop some AI model. And by model, you can imagine a box, right? So the box is taking the data in and producing some output, typically some recommendation, some decision, and so on. But typically, the AI technology by itself is not a standalone application with front-end user interface, connection to databases, cannot typically work 24/7 without any issues and so on. Model is just a model. Typically, it is run once over the data, it is producing some output, and that's it. And it is important not to stop at the point 3, basically developing AI model, providing the results 1, and say that's it. It is important to go further and basically wrap this model into a software application, which is helping the users. And basically the users can access this AI model in a simple way. So basically they have a single button, right? And in the morning they push the button, something happens. Or a client comes and right away they see all the information about the client and find a recommendation from the AI engine on a screen without pressing any button. And they don't have to understand what is happening within the box. But what is important from the engineering perspective is to wrap the AI model in a production-ready system, which is able to work 24/7 and provide the desired outputs to the users. And finally, when talking about users, it is important to ensure that the users are actually using the system. And we saw that many times, if there is disconnect between business and technology, that actually the IT or some external vendor together with IT delivers a quite nice solution. But the users sometimes don't even know that the feature exists. Or the users are used to use a different kind of system and the new one is completely different and they don't know how to use it and so on. So the adoption is critical for the quick win and for, let's say, starting the AI transformation. And if we look at the next slide on some, let's say, takeaways. So the number 1 at the bottom is that it is important for the first projects to succeed. It is not important to solve the most, let's say, valuable use case or let's say the most valuable problem you have, but to choose small problems, practical problems, which have value and which can be solved quickly, let's say within months. And again, as we were discussing on the previous slide, the point number 2 is that it is important to deliver solution to the end, not to leave it in some intermediate state as a script and push it to the users such that everyone is convinced that the technology, the modern technology, being it AI, IoT or other, brings the added value. And third point, which we typically recommend is that the external AI team works very closely with the internal teams. So external AI teams, as they are working across industries, across different banks and so on, typically have a very deep AI expertise and have already knowledge about successful deployments and what to do and what not to do, right? On the other hand, your internal teams have very deep and intimate knowledge how your organization works, what is specific with respect to your data, your processes, your organization, and so on. So putting them together is the winning strategy for addressing some specific use case. But this is just the beginning. And then there is the whole journey of AI transformation. And I think we are a few slides ahead. Andrei, could you move 2 slides back, please? Yes, the transforming with AI slide, which is following after this one. Yeah, this one. So here, basically, you won the first hearts and minds of the users adopting AI by the first use case. But that's just the beginning of the revolution. And there are 2 perspectives. One is the business and organization perspective, and second is technological one. So Tomáš, could you tell us more about how to transform the company from the organizational perspective?
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, I think starting small is a really good start, because what we see is that adoption in general, breaking the barrier of trust, let's say, in the management circles, is usually starts with a success. It doesn't have to be, as Andrei said, it doesn't have to be the greatest, biggest thing ever happen. It just have to work. It just has to work. So in that regard, you know, to break the barrier of trust and understanding of what it can do for you, you know, it's the first thing to do. And then, you know, I think the biggest thing in terms of, okay, let's talk about how do I organize myself in order to leverage AI in a greater way, right? So do I, you know, create a data science team that is, you know, in IT, or like, where should I put it? You know, should it be part of some other department, business intelligence, finance, right? So in this regard, you know, the questions that we have need to be aligned with a business goal. So if we're, for example, you know, I'll give you an example. I remember times where analytics teams were being prepared, and centralization at the time was pretty big. Centralization of teams has one big disadvantage, and that is that most of the time the team then works on everything, and they lose the know-how of the individuals. So, you know, the questions that are here that we're looking at are mostly about you know, answering a question such as, what is my business goal? Do I want to, you know, operational efficiency? Fine, let's do it. In that case, you know, you can pick 2 or 3, maybe even 1 person who's able to do the AI and AI models, and embedded them with the unit, right? And but then you have to start thinking, how do you organize a unit within your organization? And usually that should be based on the goals. And I would recommend, like, this is what I've seen most of the time. If it's a central team, then please have specialized people for 1 or 2 areas, so that they don't lose the know-how of the area, or embed them with the units that they are supposed to help. You know, they need to be part of the deal. So in that regard, they need to be part of, let's say, the business. They shouldn't be, secluded somewhere else. And then how do I make it systemic, right? And in the systemic, I mean, under which department, who's going to keep the KPIs, and so on and so forth. One thing is for sure, there's no one golden path. You already might have the organization ready for it. You just need to embed the people. Maybe you might not, right? And so in that regard, this is not like one size fits all, but you need to really look at your organization and say, what's the best fit for me? I already have the data, I have the infrastructure, I just need the team. I'm already hungry for all of the use cases I already came up with, right? Or I don't know what to do. I don't even know the use cases. So you're completely in a different situation. There's a different path for you than in embedding people, KPIs, and let's say organizational structure into your ranks. But there are also technical difficulties that we're talking about, and Andrei should talk about it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. So basically, the AI transformation is a technological transformation. So it is important to keep that in mind. And I believe you noticed that throughout the slides and throughout the presentation, we are talking about data. So while basically transforming yourself in the following years, you need to keep in mind that the data will still be the underlying infrastructure, right? So you need to create an infrastructure which is able to collect the data, to make the data compatible, and to be prepared for future streams of data which might be coming either from mobile applications or new devices which your customers would use. So that's like the bottom line. And the question is then about a specific technology which you would use, being it programming language, some framework, type of neural networks, and so on. So there is a lot of things to think about, but I wouldn't recommend to think about them at the beginning. At the beginning, when you have, the first use case to win or first few use cases to win, just use the technology which is suitable for the use case and do not constrain the vendors or the AI experts with a specific technology. But at some point, you need to choose and decide, right? So for example, in one organization, we see that they have 8 chatbots across the organization, and each of the chatbots is delivered in different technology. So at this point, they are unifying the chatbots, and I think they could start actually earlier. And after having 2-3 chatbots, they could think about some underlying common platform for all the chatbot solutions, right? So at some point, you would need to structure the technological stack as well, such that it is compatible with your data layer, with your infrastructure, but also design the architecture in a way such that it is modular. Because what we know for sure, that in the future there will be new technologies which would need to be incorporated, and your architecture shouldn't be locked and shouldn't prohibit the use of new technologies. And once you are there, typically what we see is adoption of some unified machine learning platform, which is helping to unify the development of new models and allows to maintain the models in production for a long time and continuously evaluate their quality. And once there is this, I would say, extendable architecture, correct data collection and data management process in place, and a generic machine learning platform, then actually the companies can scale and address the largest problems and use cases there are. So if we go to next slide, I would like to empower you even more and give you a specific example, a specific use case which we conducted together with a major Central European bank. And the use case was about early warning system for portfolios of SME companies. So this bank is providing loans to around 70,000 SMEs within a country. And it is given by the regulation that at least every 12 months, each of those SMEs, each of those companies have to be audited. So basically, the people behind the process need to look into the data, into the financial results, and understand whether there is some problem or whether everything is all right. And there is quite significant number of people actually doing that all year round, right? But also, within that 12 months, within the year, many things can happen, right? So I audited the company in January, and then next January, the company is bankrupted for 3 months. So I need to also pay attention throughout the year if something is happening. And basically, given the number of companies to audit, that's just prohibitive, and the people are overburdened. But that's the great, I would say, use case for AI, because then we can redesign the process. And basically, every time we get new information from any SME, we can, or the AI can evaluate if there is some danger, if there is some problem, and it seems that the financial health of that institution is worsening, and warn as soon as possible, given a person responsible for that company, that something is happening, and they should call that company and understand the problem. So basically, after deploying that system into production, the overall financial health of the portfolio of companies improved, and PL of the bank improved as well as a result. But also the time saved by auditing the companies in perfect financial health could be used for additional business development. So basically, there were significant costs saved, and the revenue increased significantly. And this project was conducted, and I think it is important. So one takeaway from this slide is that we were able to implement the technology and adopt the new process within 3 months. How we did that is described on this slide. So basically, as we were recommending in the previous half of the seminar, it is important to understand the business and quantify the business objectives, right? And then framing the business problem as analytical tasks such that the analysts can actually solve the business problem. And also, very at the beginning, it is important to set the expectations from business. So basically setting some baseline, some target to meet, some baseline to beat, right? Once this is in place, it is important to get the data onto a common heap, into some warehouse, into a database, where actually we can deploy the AI model. And here you can observe that we were able to develop and deploy an AI model in 2 weeks, because we actually reused a pre-developed framework of ours, and this basically contributed to the speed of development and delivery. So once we had the model, we pushed the model into production. We validated the model. The model met the targets, so we pushed it into production. And once it was in production, we conducted a number of trainings for the users, and the model was adopted. The process was changed, and basically the result was that actually 62% of the clients were whitelisted. So basically 62% of clients could be, contacted for business, not for audit. And from the rest, we were able to cover 97% of the defaults almost in real time. So the result was tremendous, and the deployment was done in 3 months. So what is the takeaway from all of this? This is summarized on next slide, and we are closing slowly the seminar. So basically what we see is that AI is here, and the impact is already significant. In some industries, let's say automotive, the impact is huge, right? So there are self-driving cars, power engines, basically running on electricity. Automation in manufacturing is on really high level, and so on. So we see the tremendous impact on segments like automotive or logistics. But if you look closer, even in fintech, let's say trading, portfolio management, and so on. So the algorithms are trading on any major stock exchange around the world. So we know that things will going to change. And of course, we know that AI offers big opportunities, and we tried to disclose some of those. But it is difficult to grasp them, to start to maintain the process of transformation. But what we recommend is to deliver a working solution, to solve the first problem, and then you can start with the AI transformation. On the next slide, Tomáš is providing you a specific recommendations on how to start in your organization.
Okay. So we already had some, we're at the end before we get to Q&A. So real quick, how we usually see, things starting. If you are looking for the first use case, then, one-day seminar is a good thing. Put your people together in one room for a couple of hours, figure it out, the use cases, have the data scientists with them or the analysts with them, just to make sure that they steer the conversation to cases where AI is applicable well. And, you should get out of this seminar with basically a workshop with a list of top list of use cases which you can work on, right? With the next steps, how to proceed. Or you can hire somebody to build your roadmap. Basically they'll scan, your technology, talent, processes, and organization. Then, they will tell you, hey, you need to first transfer this, you have to, change a little bit of the data storage, etc., etc., and then you're ready for this, or you're ready for this. You just need to, grapple with use cases and, systemize the interfaces, blah, 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 right? APIs, microservices, etc. If you have all of that, you can start, or you can start prototype. That could be after the workshop. You don't need a roadmap to start a prototype. So you can most definitely start with that. You have already an idea, just do it. An implementation of a solution, okay, it's an easy thing for those who've done it. So basically the recommendation here is hire somebody who already done it. Don't when it's something such as infrastructure, somebody who already done it. So don't lose time on something that somebody already knows how to do. So this is from my perspective everything. So we can move on to Q&A.
Thanks, Tomáš, and thanks also, Andrej, for the presentation. I think it was very interesting, and I believe some other participants as well thinks it's interesting because we have received a few questions already. I will go one by one through, but if any other participants still have questions, then feel free to use the Q&A button at the bottom and share with us some further questions, and we will go through as many questions as we would be able within the time frame. So let's go through first one. First question would be, why do you think some companies succeed in AI transformation while others fail? I'm not sure if this is better for Andrej or Tomáš, but I would be also interested in knowing this, your answer here.
So I might give my perspective on that. I wouldn't say that some companies already succeeded and some failed, right? So maybe Google succeeded, Amazon succeeded because they are continuously adopting the newest AI technologies and they are the trendsetters. So keeping them aside, I think companies are, I would say, on the road, right, of AI transformation or adoption. And some of them are further down the road, and some of them are maybe choosing some crossroads which are difficult to cross. So they are not failing per se, but maybe they are postponing the decisions and so on, or they are getting ready. So I wouldn't say that there were fails, but some of the companies struggle, right? And we try to explain throughout this presentation what is the struggle and how to tackle that, how to tackle the challenges and issues, right? And of course, the answer is which companies are down the road even further. I believe they are following the generic advices which we gave through this presentation, and are actually thinking about AI as an innovation initiative. It is, and as innovation, it is inherently risky. So you need to manage it as a risky initiative. Some things might fail and might not succeed because there is some uncertainty in the adoption, for sure. But some things will succeed, some use cases will be solved, and that will push you forward. So I wouldn't say there is like principal difference between the companies, but it's about like continuing in adopting the mindset which he presented in this presentation, which moves you forward.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It's mostly that, yeah, I think it's mostly I would call it KPI. Yeah? And why KPI? Because if you don't understand what it can do for you, then you cannot set the KPI right so that it can be adopted. So by other words, if I go to underwriting, in risk, and say I need better approval rates, then I understand what the KPI is, right? I need to improve KPI. I need to improve approval rates. And if I don't understand that AI, some algorithms can do that for me, and how much, then I'm not going to set that goal. I'm going to keep on going where I am. So that kind of like understanding what it can do for me, and then setting the KPIs are usually the struggle. What I see in organizations, making sure that it trickles, the understanding of what it can do for me trickles down to real KPIs in the business.
Okay, thank you. And I think Andre, during your answer, you mentioned some of the bigger companies like Google. There is a question connected to it, so I'll probably jump to this one. What role do you think will technological giants like Tencent or Google play in future banking?
Well, that's a really good question, and I think it can be generalized to any segment, right? So, what role will Google play in healthcare, automotive, banking, right? So, for sure, there will be some role in any industry. Google is penetrating into automotive by self-driving cars. It's penetrating into the cell phone market with their Android, penetrating into banking with Google Pay, and potentially other services. What is important to understand is that Google, Apple, and these type of companies have superior talent to everyone with respect to AI. They have superior technologies, and they have tremendous amount of data about us, right? So what does it imply is that if they decide to launch, say, Google Bank, they will be in a superior position with respect to technology, information about customers, and talent. On the other hand, they lack the local presence. They lack the underlying transactional infrastructure and all the regulations in place. So I think it is important to understand how these big giants threaten your companies, but also what is unique in your companies, what you can take as an advantage against these giants. And of course, then, and I think that's the most advanced concept, is to understand what are the synergies. And if you could potentially use things and services Google is, for example, offering to enhance your business and stay within the business.
Thanks. I hope this answered the question. And I would go maybe to other interesting questions. one question which just now we received. I think it's kind of connected, so I will jump into this one. It's how do you see fintech adapts AI in the next 2 to 3 years?
So if I may again, so by fintech, let's try to be more specific, and let's look at the companies like Revolut or TransferWise and other companies providing financial services. So what we see is that they are harvesting machine learning, especially machine learning technology, massively to provide services which are really user-friendly, which are personalized, and which provide added value on top of, let's say, existing infrastructure. So, and I am not sure if we can generalize on top of that. But I believe that the new startup companies and the fintech companies have AI or machine learning already as an integral part of the infrastructure, right? So they are not adapting that, they are growing on top of that. And basically they are using AI and machine learning from the start. And this gives them an advantage because then the modern technology is becoming a natural part of their solution, which differentiates them against those who are struggling to integrate AI into their businesses and infrastructure.
Okay, I think this answered the question. If not, then feel free to maybe reformulate the question. But in the meantime, let's go to another question, which is what would you recommend for the newly started organization projects that are interested in the AI, but they don't have any data at this moment?
That's a really, really good question. And I think there are 2 points to that. So we work quite frequently with startups, with seed funding, really, really small companies, like few guys excited about business, and they know that they can use some technology, but they don't have the data or they don't have the knowledge about the technology. So one thing is that I believe you already have some data, right? So you might buy some third-party data. And what we recommend from the beginning is to start collecting the data. And within a month or 2, you actually already have some data set which you can use for some sort of analysis. So first thing is to get something in place which starts the data collection process, right? So start collecting data from the beginning and maybe wait 1 month, 2 months, and you already have some small data set over which you can reason and where you can deploy the first techniques. On the other hand, I wouldn't choose here some really big hammer like AI hammer, some deep learning frameworks to go through these small data sets. I would start small and simple. So, start from the business problem. As a newly started organization and or newly started project, you have the business objective, right? You have the business problem to solve. So let's design the box which solves the problem. And maybe inside, let's put there something simple, a few rules, right? Maybe a person who is driving the decisions and so on. It doesn't have to be AI within the box at the beginning, right? But start collecting the data required by the box for decision making. And as you have more and more data, start improving the technology within that box. And at some point, when you have enough data, replace that technology within the box with AI or ML. So I would say bootstrap something without the data with some simple box controlled by a person, or which is based on simple rules, like some rules of thumb. And then as this process is running, it naturally generates the data, which you can then use to train some AI model and replace this human-driven or rule-based box with the AI box.
Okay, thanks for the comprehensive answer. We have also a question which is specifically asking about one of the use cases, I believe, which was somewhere at the beginning of the presentation mentioned. It says, through the presentation, you mentioned fraud detection use case as an example. Have you delivered such solution in practice? What could be expected results, or what you observed if you delivered such solution? think, Andre, maybe that's a question towards you. If you have any experience with such topic, or maybe Tomáš, if you have seen it somewhere in practice.
I'm sorry, Andre, I'm not sure.
This is the fraud detection case, yeah?
I will maybe repeat the question. Through the presentation, you mentioned fraud detection use case as an example. Have you delivered such solution in practice? What were the real results of AI implementation you observed?
Okay, I caught a question. All right, sorry. Yeah, so we actually delivered number of fraud detection systems across different industries, and everywhere what we see is, I would say, that the number of fraudulent applications, fraudulent use cases, fraudulent clients were caught early without causing any damage. So when we deployed anti-fraud solution in telco for application fraud, immediately we were able to detect fraudulent applications for new cell phones and new tariffs, and basically stopping them at the beginning without causing any damage. To quantify the impact is that the return on investment on that solution is within a few months. So when the company made the investment within 2-3 months, the investment was returned. So basically the value is huge. And what we saw is that there was some rule-based anti-fraud system in place, and there were of course people integrated or part of the process, but adding the AI layer on top of that, not replacing everything, but adding on top of that, further increased the fraud detection rate significantly. So, and we see that across domains. We see that in banking, we see that in telco, and we see that in insurance. So with respect to fraud, we are pretty confident that AI is the right tool to integrate within the fraud detection processes.
Yeah, this is Tomáš. Actually, I've seen the implementation of AI for fraud detection in, let's say, one of the large international consumer finance companies. Basically, the fraud managers, first of all, fraud managers and risk in general are kind of skeptical, right? So they want to see proofs, and they ran it side by side. They saw how much work it actually decreased for, false positives are a very, very big problem in fraud detection systems. And it creates a lot of work for nothing, right? And, basically right now, the fraud managers are replacing the rule-based system only with AI. So they trusted in a way that, okay, they said, okay, our rule-based system is outdated. It creates just only false, mostly false positives. Everything else is caught by the engine. They're basically putting out the rule-based engine.
Okay, thanks, Andre, thanks, Tomáš. I think given the time, let's go through one last question, which I think might be interesting. And for the remaining questions, we'll probably just type in the answer for the people who asked, so that we can then finish on time. So the last question, which I think might be interesting from those which are remaining, is that you have shown multiple practical use cases of AI implementation, but from your experience, what was the use case with the highest really measured business value?
Okay, so from my perspective, this is Tomáš again. It was at the moment with the highest, the question is business value, right? And you can measure it, like if you measure it in time, etc., as different scale. But for me, it was the amazing change when you implement a chatbot and a voice bot in an inbound call center. The tremendous relief in terms of work and then in FTEs it required was really in it was more, it was like 30-40%, and when you're looking at huge call centers, it was crazy. It was like crazy high. It was wonderful.
From my perspective, I think the question is narrowed down by the measured business value. So there are use cases where you can measure the business value and the impact of that solution right away, which is, for example, the anti-fraud solution, right? It is quantifiable. You can do some A/B testing. You can compare it to previous year. You can quantify the number of FTE saves and so on. Honestly, I think the biggest business value what we saw is when a bank, a Central European bank, started to provide personalized recommendations and personalized advices to their clients. So basically, they modeled their clients and customers quite comprehensively, creating so-called 360-degree view on that client. And based on that view, they were able to recommend to specific client within a specific time through a specific channel a personalized offer. And so what happened is that the customer experience increased dramatically, right? So you don't get irrelevant mortgage offers or loan offers where you don't need them, but you get them just in time. And basically this creates huge amount of trust between the clients and the bank, right? And which also somehow solidifies the relationship between the client and the bank, because if the bank understands my needs and provides me the best recommendations and the best offers, I don't have the incentives to go anywhere else. So basically the immediate measured business value was there because we saw increased let's say number of loan applications and so on. But I think the long-term impact is even bigger, because the customer base, which I have now as a bank, is satisfied, is happy, and will stick with me in the future. And I think that's also very important to consider.
Thank you, Andrei. And Tomáš, I think we are getting towards the end of the webinar as was scheduled. Maybe do you have any last words which you would like to share with the participants before we will end this session?
Sure. So first of all, I want to thank you for listening. I hope there were some practical things that you can actually take a look at. And for me, to wrap things up, is to say I saw at the beginning that most of the participants said that they are somewhere thinking about it. They have the first proof of concept, which is great. Those who are thinking about it, just start. Just start. You will the hurdles that you will see is mostly with data and adoption of things in the reality. So just please make sure that you take care of that. And once you're on the path, don't stray. Because as I said, we're not a doomsday scenario, guys. Yeah, it's like you don't adopt it, you will fail, blah blah blah. No, you probably will live and everything will be okay. However, you will lose a lot of experience because at some point you will have to adopt it. And if you see or hear that somebody learned how to ride a bike, it's not that they just bought somebody who has a great bike and it rides well, right? It's because they had to actually learn how to ride it. So in that case, be patient and get through the hurdles. This is the most important thing that is there for me.
Thanks. Andrei, is there something you would like to add?
No, I think Tomáš put it together very nicely. I would just encourage you to start. AI is here, the technology is mature, and of course there is always some issue, some problem, and you can always postpone it. I don't have enough data, I don't have the talent and so on, but every everything can be, I would say, overcome, and you can start right away. So I wouldn't postpone anything. I would start. I would recommend to start small. I wouldn't recommend to start huge initiatives from the beginning, but start small, start specific, and see the immediate result of AI application. So that's my recommendation.
Okay. Then again, Tomáš, Ondrej, let me thank you very much for sharing with us your insights. And from the organizational perspective, we will share this presentation with all the participants in a follow-up email, probably in upcoming days. And we will be also happy to discuss further use cases on separate meetings if you found this topic interesting. So let me also thanks for our participants to thank them for joining the webinar, and I hope you will have a very nice day today. So goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.